Winter is coming.
Winter is coming.
It's cold outside.
You don't know cold.
Winter is coming!
Ah yes, winter is coming, and welcome to my ice fishing forecast for 2022. Brought to you by Berkeley, help you catch more fish this winter. Clam outdoors, don't just live winter, thrive in it. And aqua-vu, stop guessing, start watching. Both Environment Canada and the Farmer's Almanac are calling for a mild winter with a lot more snow. And of course we'll have to wait till it gets here before we find out if their predictions are actually true. Not that they've ever been wrong. NOAA, or Great Lakes Environmental Research Laboratory, issued a report showing the Great Lakes as having the highest surface temperatures on record. So you might ask how we're going to get from record high surface temperatures to ice. According to National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, or NOAA, we have an extreme polar vortex in the making, and that should take care of it. The modeling shows a cold blast in early winter, subsiding until February, where we get another cold blast. Bring it on! Perch are the #1 targeted species on Lake Simcoe. Ice anglers come far and wide for Lake Simcoe's famed jumbo perch. They are the primary economic driver for the fishing industry on Lake Simcoe. Pretty easy to catch for all age groups and skill levels, and they're probably the best table fare the lake has to offer. But there's a lot of pressure on this species. Daily limits and possession limits are very generous. There is no closed season, and you can keep up to 50 a day with possession of 100. This in itself doesn't necessarily harm the fishery, but anglers tend to harvest only larger fish. It can take 7 to 9 years for a fish to grow to 10 inches long. Unlike some species like bass, perch don't seem to be taking advantage of warming trends and an extended growing season. This is because perch are pretty aggressive feeders all year long. Perch have always had an incredible food web available to them, including goby, which spawn 5 or 6 times a year, so it actually feeds various year classes. And unlike bass and some other species, perch eggs don't suffer from the same predation from gobies. There's still a very healthy population because perch are prolific spawners. This year we're going to do a little experiment around the lake. We'll ask some volunteers to pull the operculum bone from the cheek or gill plate of a perch just to find out what the average age is around the lake. We'll show you how to do that in another short video. I expect that this is going to be a very good year for perch. Although catch rates are rarely a good indication of the overall health of a population of a certain species, you can get a pretty good sample of the average size of fish being caught in traditional places in late fall. Most of the best fishing happens during early ice, and most recreational anglers won't head out until the ice is very thick, so there's fewer anglers to share big aggressive fish. So less traffic, less noise, no machines makes for a better catching environment. Later on in the season, many of the bigger fish have already been taken from traditional areas. There's a lot more noise from surface traffic. The mid-season bite becomes less aggressive the further you get into the season, but you can still have a great day, it just takes a little longer. The second most targeted species on the lake is whitefish. Ontario Ministry of Natural Resources Fisheries Management stocks in excess of 100,000 fingerlings or yearlings a year. Add to this a very healthy natural reproduction over the last decade. The vast majority of angling effort for whitefish comes in the wintertime, so the only real pressure is for 3 to 3.5 months a year. But with a cold winter and good ice, that pressure can be intense. Particularly in shallow areas with abundant access, anglers have learned how to fish for them now. Whitefish return to the same spawning areas every year, so the more mature fish are taken, the fewer there are to return. Last year I predicted that fishing for whitefish would be a little bit tougher than the previous year, and it was, and I expect the same again this year. Many of the fish caught in these traditional areas are harvested. Some of them have been caught and released several times. There's a self-governing effect to areas that there's a lot of pressure for a long period of time. Fish become a little more selective about what they put in their mouth. So I expect a tougher bite for whitefish in shallow areas, but maybe good in deeper water. For as many years as I've been hanging cameras down under the ice, I rarely see carp. They're certainly plentiful in Simcoe, but I don't know anybody that targets them through the ice. One day I had a camera down just about 5 feet below the ice in about 30 feet of water, and I recorded 2 of them. One day I hooked into one. I thought I would lose all my line, but eventually I got it to the hole just before it broke me off. So I learned they could be caught, and they typically travel high in the water column. I suspect if you ever hooked into one, you'd start targeting them. They're huge, strong, they're like catching a bus. It's just another fishing opportunity, and you can just use a number 2/0 hook with some corn on it. That'll do the trick. It would be interesting to hear from somebody that actually does target them through the ice, on Simcoe or anywhere. Another species that has a healthy population that it is growing in popularity is northern pike. Last year I saw more tip-ups around the lake than I've ever seen before. One of the reasons for this is we had very poor ice early, and so you could only fish shallow, and pike are shallow. Pike are not aggressive feeders in the wintertime, but they are opportunists. They'll eat winter kill with the same preference they'll eat live bait, but they can also be caught on spoons, lipless cranks, and other artificial baits. They've certainly taken advantage of the extended growing season, as most of their feeding happens during open water season. Pike live a long time. They can live 15 to 25 years. A 40-inch pike is around 20 years old, but they can reach a good eating size, 4 to 5 pounds, in 4 to 6 years. I think we're going to have an excellent northern pike year. The popularity of burbot, or ling, has grown dramatically over the last 5 years on Lake Simcoe. They're very easy to catch and make fabulous table fare. There's a nice ling. They spawn under the ice in January or February when the water gets down below 4 degrees Celsius, close to shoals in the shallows and sand and gravel. Burbot are broadcast spawners, meaning that they'll swim along in a section of the water column with many males and 1 female, and then the eggs and sperm will settle on the bottom. Like whitefish, the incubation period is very long, sometimes as long as 4 months. So even though there can be 1 million eggs scattered in the region, very susceptible to predators like goby. So it's very difficult to get a handle on what the actual health of the population is. They're not accessible to netting during the spawn, so no way to count them. They only stay in the shallows for 3 or 4 weeks during the spawn. Then they transition back to deeper water, and the summer times live below the thermocline. They're basically nocturnal feeders, but the females, which are much larger than the males, will feed pretty aggressively during the spawn. And these are typically the fish that we catch. So I think it'll be a good season for them, but you have to be there at the right time. For those that have been fishing Lake Simcoe for a long time, for lake trout, this might be the most disappointing development. Over the last 2 decades, we've seen some dramatic changes to this fishery. From what seemed to be the resumption of natural reproduction from 2002 to 2005, another surge in 2010, to what we have today, little to no evidence that there's any natural reproduction going on at all. Add to this what seems to be a very low survival rate of stockfish. Going forward is not very encouraging. Because of the overwhelming evidence of natural reproduction from the early part of the decade, Ministry of Natural Resources Fisheries reduced the stocking rates from 100,000 a year to 50,000 a year. But by about 2014, there was evidence that natural reproduction had stopped. Very few small fish were being caught. And a couple of years after that, there was a little evidence that the stockfish were surviving. Again, catch rates are not really a good indicator of the health of a fishery. But in this case, the reports from guides and good anglers, both summer and winter, can give you a pretty good sample size of what's happening in the lake. By 2017, the evidence was very clear to the Ministry of Natural Resources Fisheries as it became more and more difficult to net enough fish for eggs for the hatchery. So the goal of reinstating the 100,000 per year stocking levels was moot. 2018, there was no stocking at all. 2019 came up short again, So the restoration of the lake trout fishery is going to be an uphill climb, although the ministry is certainly committed. It would certainly be unfair to put all the blame on Lake Simcoe's fishery. Sometimes science is forced to work with lagging indicators. Let's hope that the phenomena that happened in 2002, 2003 is happening again. But until it recovers, it might be time for a catch and release moratorium. But for 2022, I expect that we're going to have even a tougher year with only big fish being caught. So that's my forecast for 2022. I wish everybody a very Merry Christmas, a Happy New Year. Let's hope we get good ice, and everybody has a safe and memorable 2022 ice season.